Tonight, we're not here to fix anything, not to understand everything, not to become someone better before you're allowed to rest. This is a quiet space where we gently let go and return to inner peace through soft Zen stories inspired by the Buddha, shared slowly so your mind can soften and your body can rest. Maybe today asked a little too much from you. Too many thoughts, too many worries, too many small things you tried to hold together. And maybe, just for this moment, you're ready to set them down. Here, you don't need to improve yourself. You don't need to solve tomorrow. You are already enough simply by being here, breathing quietly. Just for a moment. Where are you listening from tonight? Wherever you are, I'm grateful you're here, sharing this quiet space. Let your breath slow, as if it remembers the way home. Let your shoulders soften, like they no longer need to carry the world. Tonight, we'll listen to a simple story. A story from ordinary life, carrying a small thread of Zen and Buddhist wisdom. Not to give you more to think about, but to help you loosen your grip. Because suffering rarely ends by force. It softens when we stop holding it so tightly. There's nothing to rush, nothing to achieve, only a gentle drifting into rest, into stillness. Whether you stay awake or slowly fall asleep, this moment is already enough. And now, we begin tonight's journey with these Zen stories. By the time she gets home, the sky is already dark. Not late dark, just that early evening kind where the day feels longer than it actually was. She drops her keys into the bowl by the door and stands there for a second longer than necessary. Shoes still on shoulders, slightly hunched, as if the day hasn't quite let go of her yet. The kitchen light hums softly when she flips it on. It's not a loud sound, just enough to remind her that something is running in the background. She sets her bag down, pulls off her jacket, and notices a faint smear of dirt along the cuff. Probably from leaning against something outside without thinking. She sighs and tosses it over the chair. At the sink, there's a small pile of things waiting. A mug from the morning, a plate she meant to rinse before leaving, and a ring she took off earlier in the day, resting near the edge, half hidden by a folded paper towel. She picks it up without much thought. It's not an expensive ring, not flashy, just something she's worn for years. The band is thin, the stone modest. When she turns it under the light, she sees a layer of grime clinging to the edges, darkened by sweat dust and whatever else the day left behind. It looks dull, tired. For a moment, the thought crosses her mind that it looks how she feels. She turns on the faucet. Water rushes out steady and familiar. She holds the ring under the stream and rubs it gently with her thumb. The dirt doesn't come off right away. It clings stubborn like it belongs there. She presses a little harder, not angrily, just with quiet determination. The day replays itself without asking. A comment from a customer that landed wrong. a look from a co-worker she couldn't quite read. The moment she realized she'd said sorry again automatically, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. It wasn't a bad day. Just one of those days that leaves a thin layer of something sticky inside. She scrubs the ring again. This time the grime starts to loosen. The metal beneath catches the light. The stone looks clearer, sharper, like it's waking up. She pauses. It hits her that the ring didn't change. It didn't become something new. The water didn't improve it. It just removed what never belonged to it in the first place. She leans her hip against the counter and keeps rinsing slower now. The sound of water fills the kitchen, blending with the low hum of the dishwasher starting up. The world narrows to this small task. This one thing she doesn't have to overthink. There's a familiar heaviness in her chest, the kind that comes from carrying quiet judgments all day. About how she talks, how she looks, how she reacts, how she should be tougher, quicker, less sensitive, more polished, more valuable. She's absorbed these ideas so gradually that they feel like facts now, not opinions. Like mud that dried over time, hardening into something that feels permanent. She shuts off the water and dries the ring with the paper towel. The stone catches the light again, bright in a way she'd forgotten. It looks exactly like it always has. No better, no worse. Just clean. Something in her softens. She realizes how often she's treated exhaustion like evidence. How often she's taken the residue of other people's moods, expectations, and impatience as proof that something was wrong with her. As if being tired or misunderstood somehow reduced her worth. But dirt doesn't cancel out a diamond. It never has. She slips the ring back onto her finger. It fits the same as it always did. Comfortable, familiar, hers. She flexes her hand, watching the light move across it. The kitchen feels quieter now. The day hasn't disappeared, but it's no longer sitting on her shoulders. It's been set down, at least for the moment. She rinses the mug next, then the plate, moving with less urgency. The water keeps flowing. The dishwasher hums. Ordinary sounds doing ordinary work. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, a simple understanding begins to form. Not loud enough to call a realization, just clear enough to feel true. What she's been trying to fix might never have been broken. She doesn't take the ring off again that night. Normally she would. It's a habit. Home means loosening things, setting them aside, creating a small distance between herself and the outside world. But this time she leaves it where it is, feeling its familiar weight as she moves around the kitchen, wiping the counter, stacking dishes, turning off the light. Later, she sits on the couch with her shoes off and her feet tucked under her. The room is dim, lit only by a lamp in the corner. Her phone buzzes once. She looks at the screen, then sets it face down on the table without answering. Not out of avoidance, just choice. Her hand rests in her lap. The ring catches the lamplight again, and she notices something she hadn't before. Tiny scratches along the band, marks from years of use. Nothing dramatic, just signs of contact with the world. For a moment, she wonders how many times she's mistaken those marks for damage. How often she's looked at herself and seen wear as failure. How quickly she's judged her own tiredness, sensitivity, and hesitation as flaws to be fixed, rather than evidence of having lived, worked, cared. The thought doesn't come with a wave of emotion. No surge of self-compassion. Just a quiet shift in how she's looking. Earlier that day, she remembers standing in front of a mirror in a public restroom, checking her face under harsh lighting. Not to admire it, to scan for problems. Dark circles, tension in her jaw, that familiar internal list of things to correct. She'd walked out of that bathroom feeling slightly diminished without even knowing why. Now sitting here, she realizes that the mirror never showed her the diamond, only the mud, not because the diamond wasn't there, but because she wasn't looking for it. She turns the ring slightly with her thumb, feeling the smooth edge of the stone. It's solid, unchanged, patient even. It hasn't been waiting for her approval. It hasn't needed her to notice it to remain what it is. That thought stays with her longer than most do. Healing, she realizes, might not be about becoming brighter or stronger or more confident. It might be about stopping the constant inspection, stepping out of the habit of searching for dirt and calling it truth. She stands and walks to the window. Outside, the street is quiet. A car passes slowly, headlights sweeping across the opposite wall. Somewhere, someone laughs, then the sound fades. The world continues without commentary. She presses her fingers lightly against the glass, cool and steady. The ring touches the window too, leaving no mark. There's something relieving about that. She doesn't need to prove her value tonight. She doesn't need to explain herself, improve herself, or rinse herself clean again and again. The day already did what it does. It left traces. And she survived it. She heads toward the bedroom and sits on the edge of the bed. The sheets are slightly rumpled. She smooths them with her hand, noticing how quickly order returns with a simple gesture. No struggle, no force. It occurs to her that the same might be true of her sense of worth. That maybe it settles naturally when she stops disturbing it. She lies back, one arm resting across her stomach, the other at her side. The ring feels cool against her skin. A small anchor. Not a reminder of anything she has to do, but of something she can stop doing. Stop apologizing for existing as she is. Stop absorbing every mood in the room as her responsibility. Stop confusing the residue of hard days with the truth about herself. Those habits don't disappear all at once. She knows that. They've been practiced for years, but tonight, she doesn't rehearse them. She lets them be unfinished. The lamp clicks off. The room darkens. And in the quiet, without effort or instruction, one simple understanding remains. What's real about her has never been threatened, only covered. The rest can be washed away slowly whenever she's ready. It started as a sound that didn't belong. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a small, misplaced noise in the middle of the night. The kind that makes your brain wake up before your body does. A soft scrape. Maybe plastic against tile. Maybe something shifting in the laundry room. Hard to tell from bed. Hard to tell in the dark. The house was quiet in that deep way it only gets after midnight, when even the refrigerator seems to hum more politely. The air felt still. The hallway looked like one long shadow. A person got up without fully deciding to. Bare feet touched the floor. The body moved slowly, careful not to step on anything. One hand reached out for the wall, fingers sliding along paint, searching for the light switch by memory. For a second, the mind offered a story. Someone's in here. It wasn't a thoughtful conclusion. It was a reflex. A flash of old instincts waking up in a modern home. The heart beat harder, like it was trying to warn the ribs. The skin tightened. The muscles prepared. The brain did what brains do in darkness. It filled in blanks. The hallway felt longer than it was. The corners looked sharper. The laundry room door, half open, looked like a mouth that had forgotten to close. Another story arrived right behind the first one. What if I left the back door unlocked? What if I didn't hear it in time? What if the body didn't care that these were only thoughts? It treated them like facts. The breath moved up into the chest. The shoulders lifted. The stomach tightened, empty but heavy. A few steps closer, and the sound happened again. A tiny clink, like a loose object settling. The fear spiked. It's right there. The hand finally found the switch. Fingers paused on the plastic plate, hovering. It's strange how even a simple action can feel risky when you're scared. Turning on a light shouldn't feel like opening a door. But in that moment, it did. The mind whispered, "Don't." The body whispered, "Do it." Click. Light filled the hallway, soft and yellow, not harsh. The shadows didn't disappear like a movie scene. They simply became ordinary again. A wall was a wall. A coat hanging on a hook was just a coat. The laundry room wasn't a mouth. It was a room. And on the tile floor, half under the edge of the laundry basket, lay the thing. A long, thin shape coiled strangely, dark against pale tile. For a few seconds, even with the light on the body, still clung to the earlier image. The nervous system didn't update instantly. It held on to the alarm like it was safer to be wrong in the direction of fear. Then the eyes focused. It wasn't a snake. It was a charging cable. One of those longer ones that always ends up in a knot, the kind that falls behind a table and drags something with it. The kind you swear you put away. The breath left the body all at once, like a sigh that had been waiting behind the ribs. Oh. The heart still beat fast, but now it was embarrassment mixed with relief. The cheeks felt warm. The mind tried to make a joke out of it, like it could laugh fear away. It's just a cable. But the body took a moment longer to believe it. That lag is important. It's the space where you can actually see the difference between fear and reality. Fear doesn't always come from what's there. It comes from what you don't know yet. Darkness is just the absence of light. Fear is often just the absence of information. The cable was picked up carefully, as if it might still surprise. Fingers felt the rubber coating, the familiar texture, the little plastic ridge near the end. Completely harmless, completely normal. And yet 10 seconds ago, it had been a threat, not because it changed, but because the mind couldn't see clearly. That's the funny thing about uncertainty. It makes the brain creative. It turns ordinary shapes into dangerous ones. It turns silence into warning. It turns, "I don't know," into something is wrong. The cable was looped once, twice, then placed on top of the washing machine. The laundry room smelled faintly of detergent and warm cloth. The dryer was off, but the air still held that soft, clean scent. The person stood there for a moment, looking around as if checking for other imaginary snakes. The light made everything plain, boring even. But the nervous system was still coming down from the rush. Adrenaline doesn't leave politely. It lingers. It asks for proof that you're safe. It wants a few extra minutes to stand guard. The mind, now calmer, tried to rewind what just happened. Why did I freak out like that? A simple question, but it carried a hidden sharpness. A hint of self-judgment, another kind of second arrow. It would be easy to turn this into a personal flaw. To label it as overreacting, being silly, being weak. But that would miss the point. The reaction wasn't stupidity. It was survival energy, misdirected by darkness. In the absence of clear seeing, the brain chooses the story that keeps you alive. It would rather embarrass you than bury you. That's not a character defect. That's biology. Still, once the light is on, there's a different choice available. Not don't feel fear, not be brave. Just see what's actually here. The hallway light stayed on as the person walked back slowly, not rushing, letting the body settle. Each step sounded louder now on the floor. Not because the house changed, but because awareness had returned. A clock ticked somewhere. The refrigerator hummed again. The ordinary sounds came back online. In the bedroom, the bed looked the same. The dark looked softer now, less like a threat, and more like night doing what night does. But before turning the light off again, there was a pause. Because the rope in the dark moment wasn't just about a cable on the floor. It was about how quickly the mind can turn the unknown into danger, how fast it can make a rope into a snake, and how much suffering can happen inside a few seconds, even when nothing is actually happening. The person stood near the doorway, hand on the switch. Noticing the leftover tension in the shoulders, the slight tremble in the hands, the way the stomach still felt tight. A quiet question rose, not sharp, not demanding. What else have I been calling a snake lately? Just because I couldn't see it clearly. The light remained on for a moment longer, not because the room needed it, because the mind did. With the light still on, the house felt smaller, not cramped, just knowable. Corners had names again. Objects returned to their usual jobs. Nothing hid behind its outline anymore. That's what light does. It doesn't argue with fear. It doesn't mock it. It simply shows what's there. The body slowly caught up. The heart eased back into a steadier rhythm. The shoulders dropped, not all the way, but enough. Fear had burned bright for a moment, then lost its fuel once the picture became clear. What lingered wasn't fear anymore. It was understanding. Not the kind that comes from explanation, but the kind that comes from seeing. The cable hadn't been dangerous. The darkness hadn't been evil. The mind had just been guessing. And when the mind guesses in the dark, it guesses loudly. This doesn't only happen in hallways at night. It happens with emails that haven't been opened yet, with test results that haven't come back, with conversations that haven't happened, with silence where we expected reassurance, a blank screen, a delayed reply, a pause that stretches longer than expected. The mind hates blanks. It rushes to fill them. They're upset with me. Something's wrong. This is bad. And just like that, the rope becomes a snake again. The body responds the same way it did in the hallway. Tight chest, fast heart, shallow breath. The nervous system doesn't check facts, it checks tone, timing, absence. It reacts to what might be there. Fear at this stage isn't about danger, it's about not knowing. And not knowing feels intolerable when we mistake uncertainty for threat. The problem isn't that the mind creates images. That's what it's built to do. The problem is when we treat those images as truth before turning on the light. The light in daily life isn't always a switch on the wall. Sometimes it's information. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's a single honest look at what's actually happening in the body. Like noticing my heart is racing, but nothing is attacking me. Like noticing I'm scared, but I don't yet know why. Like noticing this story feels convincing, but it's still a story. Seeing clearly doesn't mean forcing certainty. It means staying close to what's real. The person stood there a little longer, not because they were afraid to turn the light off, but because something had shifted in how fear was understood. It wasn't an enemy anymore. It was a signal that vision was incomplete. Darkness doesn't create monsters. It just hides details. Fear doesn't create disasters. It fills gaps with guesses. The mind often treats fear as something to fight or get rid of. But fear doesn't dissolve through force. It dissolves through clarity. When you see the rope as a rope, the snake disappears on its own. No victory, no struggle, just correction. That's the quiet power of understanding. Not the understanding that comes from thinking harder, but the understanding that comes from seeing more. Seeing the email as unopened, not as rejection. Seeing the silence as pause, not as judgment. Seeing the future as unknown, not as doomed. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it's neutral. It doesn't lean toward harm or safety. It's just empty space waiting to be filled by reality instead of imagination. Fear rushes in to protect that space. It says, "Be careful." And that's not wrong. What causes suffering is when we forget to turn the light on and keep living as if the snake is real. The hand finally reached for the switch. This time there was no hesitation, no dramatic pause, just a simple click. Darkness returned, but it felt different now. Softer, familiar. The room hadn't changed, perception had. The bed accepted weight, sheets shifted. The pillow felt cool on one side. Ordinary sensations grounded the body back into the present moment where nothing was chasing. Nothing was lurking. Nothing was demanding an answer right now. Some fears will return. That's inevitable. There will be more dark hallways, more unanswered messages, more shapes that look dangerous before they're understood. But each time you turn on the light, whether with information, patience, or simple awareness, the mind learns something important. Not everything that scares you is real. And not everything unknown is dangerous. Sometimes it's just a rope on the floor, waiting to be seen. Anger doesn't always arrive as heat. Sometimes it shows up as pressure. A tightness you carry quietly long after the moment that caused it has passed. The bathroom light was the only one on in the apartment. Everything else stayed dark. The fan hummed overhead, steady and low, pooling steam toward the ceiling. The mirror was fogged just enough to blur the edges of a tired face without hiding it completely. Hands rested on the sink. The water ran warm, then hotter, then back again, as if the body was trying to find the right temperature for something that wasn't really about the water. It had been a long shift. The kind where irritation stacked up in small, forgettable ways. A sharp comment from someone who didn't mean it kindly. A decision that landed unfairly. A moment where speaking up would have taken too much energy, so silence was chosen instead. Silence can look calm from the outside. Inside, it often turns into something else. The jaw had been clenched for hours, shoulders slightly raised as if bracing against an invisible weight. The body knew it was carrying anger, even if the mind hadn't named it yet. Soap was pumped into one hand. The smell was familiar, clean, almost comforting. As the hands rubbed together, the skin felt rougher than expected. Dry, overworked. A small sting flared at a cut near the knuckle. That sting brought attention back into the body. There was a memory not from today, but from much earlier in life. An image of a sword seen once in a museum. Old, decorative, locked behind glass. The blade was dull, the metal dark with rust. What stood out wasn't how dangerous it looked, but how the rust had eaten into the scabbard itself. The plaque had explained that when a blade stays sheathed while still wet, corrosion begins from the inside out. The sword doesn't need to be swung to cause damage. Time and moisture are enough. The thought returned now, uninvited, but clear. Anger works like that. When it isn't expressed, when it isn't released, it doesn't just disappear. It stays close to the body, inside the chest, in the jaw, in the stomach. And before it ever touches the person it's aimed at, it starts wearing down the one holding it. The water was turned off. Silence filled the room except for the fan. A towel was reached for, pressed against the hands, then paused. There was no urge to explode, no fantasy of confrontation, just a low, steady irritation that had been humming all evening, draining energy in the background. Forgiveness hadn't crossed the mind yet. It still felt too abstract, too generous. What was clearer was something simpler. This feeling was exhausting, not because it was intense, but because it was constant. The mirror was wiped with the edge of the towel clearing a small circle. One eye looked back, then the other. The expression wasn't angry in any obvious way, just tired, guarded. The body had been holding on to something that no longer had a clear target. The sword image stayed. The rust spreading quietly, not dramatic, not loud, just persistent. the damage invisible until it wasn't. Anger likes to pretend its power, but most of the time it's weight. The shoulders dropped a fraction, not on purpose, but because they had run out of reason to stay lifted. A breath moved through the chest, shallow at first, then a little deeper. No conclusion was reached. No moral decision made. Just an acknowledgement keeping this inside is costing me. The towel was hung back on the rack. The fan clicked off. The bathroom light stayed on a moment longer, illuminating the quiet space. There was nothing to do right now. Nothing to fix, nothing to say, only the clear sense that whatever forgiveness might mean later, it would have to begin here, not with the other person, but with the body that had been carrying the blade all evening. And that body deserved better than rust. The bathroom light was turned off, but the hum of the fan lingered for a few seconds before fading completely. The apartment settled into its nighttime quiet. No music, no television. Just the low, distant sound of traffic outside and the soft creak of the floor as weight shifted from one foot to the other. There was no rush to do anything next. Anger often pushes for movement, a response, an action, some kind of release, but now movement felt unnecessary. The image of the rusted sword stayed close, not as a warning, but as a simple explanation. The blade hadn't been ruined by battle. It hadn't failed because it wasn't strong enough. It had worn itself down by being held in a state it was never meant to stay in. Wet, tight, closed. That felt uncomfortably familiar. All evening the body had been locked around something unsaid. Muscles tightened to keep it contained. Breath shortened to keep it from spilling out. It wasn't dramatic, but it was constant, like holding a fist closed for hours and calling it control. Forgiveness in that moment didn't look like generosity. It looked like loosening, not excusing what happened, not pretending it didn't matter, just stopping the body from continuing the punishment. A glass of water was poured in the kitchen. The sound was ordinary. The weight of the glass in the hand was grounding. The coolness against the palm drew attention back to something real and immediate. The first sip was small, automatic. The second was slower. With it came a realization that didn't feel philosophical at all. The person who caused the anger wasn't here. They weren't affected by this tension. They weren't paying any price for it. The body was. Shoulders still carried a faint ache. The jaw resisted, then softened. There was a quiet negotiation happening beneath thought, as if the nervous system was checking whether it was safe to stand down. Nothing bad happened when it did. The rusted sword didn't need polishing in that moment. It didn't need to be restored to something sharp or impressive. It just needed air, space, a chance to dry. Forgiveness maybe was that pause, that exposure, that willingness to stop sealing the blade back into the scabbard while it was still wet. There was no ceremony to it, no inner speech declaring release. Just a subtle shift from holding to allowing. The apartment felt different now, not because anything had changed, but because the body had. The same walls, the same dim light from the street, the same quiet ticking of the clock in the other room. But the pressure inside the chest had eased, not disappeared. just loosened enough to breathe around. The mind tried briefly to pull the conversation back into focus, to review, to re-enter the argument. It didn't stick. There was nothing left to grip onto. The sword image faded, replaced by something simpler: hands opening. Anger hadn't been wrong. It had been information, a signal that something crossed a line. But keeping that signal active long after the moment passed was no longer useful. Signals are meant to be noticed, not lived in. A window was cracked open. Cool air moved in, brushing against the warmth of the room. The contrast was sharp at first, then calming. The body adjusted without comment. It felt clear in a way that didn't need explaining, that forgiveness wasn't about the other person deserving peace. It was about the body needing it. The night continued on. Dishes left for later. Lights dimmed. The ordinary progression of things that didn't require vigilance. Anger, when it returned again someday, as it always would, might still arrive quietly. But now, there was a reference point. A memory of what it felt like to stop letting it corrode from the inside. To let the blade breathe. To let the scabbard rest. And in that small, practical release, something inside found its way back to a steadier ground. Late at night, the room feels smaller than it did during the day. The desk lamp is the only light on, casting a soft circle across the surface. Everything outside that circle fades into shadow. The hum of a small fan fills the silence, steady and low, like it's trying to hold the space together. There's a piece of thread caught on the corner of the desk. It's thin, almost invisible unless you're looking right at it. One end clings to the edge of a notebook, the other disappears somewhere behind the lamp. It must have come from a tag or an old shirt or something carried in without noticing. It's not important, and yet it's hard to ignore. A hand reaches out to pull it away. The thread doesn't come loose easily. When it's tugged, it stretches, catches on something else, then splits into two thinner strands. One goes free. The other tightens, pulling more pieces into view. Now there are 3, then 4. What was once a single thread becomes a small web of resistance. There's a pause, a quiet frustration. Not anger, just that familiar feeling of things becoming more complicated than they need to be. It's strange how often this happens in the mind. One thought shows up, just one. A simple concern. Something like, did I handle that right today? Harmless enough, normal. But instead of letting it pass, the mind pulls on it, examines it, follows it. And before long, that one thought has branched into 10 others, each connected, each tightening the space a little more. Like a spider working patiently in the dark, the mind builds connections quickly. One idea attaches to another, then another. Soon there's a full structure in place, intricate, detailed, and hard to escape without causing more disturbance. The web isn't built to trap you. It's built to make sense of things, to create order, to protect. That's what makes it convincing. But protection can turn into confinement when it never stops. The thread on the desk is still there. Instead of pulling again, the hand withdraws. The thread is left alone, hanging quietly where it is. It doesn't move. It doesn't tighten. Without attention, it loses its power to resist. There's something revealing in that. The mind tends to believe that every loose end needs to be handled immediately. Every thought needs to be followed to its conclusion. Every worry deserves a response. But many of these threads only exist because attention keeps feeding them. A spider's web is strong only because the spider keeps returning to it, keeps reinforcing it, keeps adding layer after layer. The fan hums. Papers on the desk stay where they are. The room remains still. Thoughts continue to show up, of course. They always will. A memory, a scenario that hasn't happened yet. A quiet question about what tomorrow might bring. But instead of pulling on them, instead of tracing every connection, there's a moment of hesitation. What happens if this one is left alone? The thought hangs there like the thread did, present but not tightening. Without reaction, it doesn't multiply. It doesn't pull others into it. It just exists thin and fragile until something else naturally takes its place. There's relief in not engaging. Not because the thought was defeated, but because it didn't need to be. The desk lamp flickers slightly as someone shifts in the chair. The circle of light stays steady. Outside that circle, the room remains undefined, unconcerned with what's happening inside the mind. Overthinking often feels like being trapped inside a web you didn't choose. But rarely do we see how involved we are in building it. Each moment of attention, each replay, each attempt to control outcomes adds another strand. And yet, the same attention that builds the web can also stop building it. Not by tearing it down, not by fighting it, but by stepping back. The thread on the desk is still there. It hasn't disappeared. It hasn't been fixed. But it no longer matters. And in that small, ordinary moment, something important becomes clear. Many of the webs we feel stuck in are only held together by our continued participation. When we stop adding to them, they loosen on their own. The room hasn't changed. The lamp is still on. The fan still hums. The thread still hangs from the corner of the desk exactly where it was left. Nothing dramatic happened when attention moved away from it. No collapse, no sudden relief. Just space. That's often how it goes. When the mind stops pulling on a thought, there isn't fireworks. There isn't silence either. There's simply less tension, fewer connections being made, fewer strands tightening around each other. The chair creaks slightly as weight shifts. A foot presses flat against the floor. Small physical movements that don't ask for analysis. The body knows how to settle long before the mind catches on. Another thought appears. This one feels important. It carries urgency. It says, "Don't forget this, and you should think this through, and if you don't handle it now, it will come back worse later." These thoughts are persuasive. They sound responsible, reasonable, mature. They're also familiar. The mind reaches for them automatically the same way it reached for the thread earlier. It's a habit built over years. Pulling feels safer than leaving things loose. Engaging feels like control. But something is different now. There's a brief pause before reacting, just enough to notice the shape of the moment. If attention goes there, another web will form. Not because the thought is dangerous, but because attention is creative. It builds, it connects, it weaves. A spider doesn't rush. It works patiently, almost invisibly. One anchor point, then another. Overthinking works the same way. A small worry anchors to a memory. That memory connects to an imagined future. The imagined future hooks into a sense of identity. Before long, the mind is suspended inside a structure it helped create. And then it wonders why it feels stuck. The key isn't to destroy the web. That only creates more movement, more resistance, more entanglement. The key is to stop adding new threads. The thought is allowed to stay. It isn't pushed away. It isn't solved. It's simply not fed. Attention doesn't follow it into side paths, doesn't ask it questions, doesn't try to complete it. Without reinforcement, it begins to weaken. This isn't a technique. It's closer to a choice not to participate. The fan continues its steady rhythm. The sound is simple, repetitive, almost boring. It doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't require interpretation. Listening to it doesn't create stories. The mind notices that. It drifts there instead. To the sound, to the feeling of air moving lightly across the skin, to the weight of the body in the chair, ordinary sensations that don't demand meaning. Thoughts still pass through, but they don't stick. They don't connect. They don't get woven into something larger. A spider abandons a web when it no longer serves a purpose, when it stops catching anything, when it costs more energy to maintain than it's worth. The mind does the same. When thoughts stop receiving attention, they lose their structure. They become wisps instead of walls, threads instead of traps. There's no announcement when this happens. No clear line between overthinking and not overthinking. Just a gradual loosening. A sense that the space inside feels more open than it did before. The thread on the desk sways slightly as air moves through the room. It's still there, still visible, but it doesn't invite interaction anymore. It doesn't pull attention toward it. The web, such as it was, has lost its grip. This is often what letting go looks like in real life. Not a dramatic release, not a powerful decision. Just the quiet choice again and again, not to engage with every strand the mind offers. Overthinking survives on involvement. It needs checking, revisiting, rehearsing, predicting. Without those, it doesn't know how to continue. Eventually, the lamp is turned off. The room darkens. Shapes soften. The fan hum remains now less noticeable, blending into the background of the night. Nothing has been solved. No answers have been reached. And yet there's more ease than before. The web wasn't fought. It was simply left alone. And without constant attention, it loosened strand by strand until it no longer held anything at all. The trail isn't difficult. Just a narrow dirt path winding through low trees, the kind people take when they want to move without thinking too much. He didn't plan to come here. He only meant to step outside for a bit to walk off a feeling he couldn't quite name. The air is cool enough to be noticeable, not cold, just clean. He adjusts the strap of the water bottle across his chest and starts walking, shoes crunching softly against gravel and fallen leaves. There's a habit he has that shows up most clearly on days like this. A quiet scanning. As if something important might appear just ahead and he doesn't want to miss it. Relief, motivation, a sign that things are finally lining up. He's been waiting for that feeling for a long time. At work, he tells himself things will feel better after the next milestone, after the next paycheck, after the next compliment. In relationships, he waits for reassurance to arrive in the right tone at the right time. He's learned to measure his mood by what's coming toward him, not by what's already here. The trail bends and the sound reaches him before the sight. Water. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a steady moving sound, like a conversation happening nearby that you don't need to join. He follows it instinctively, stepping off the main path onto a smaller one that leads downhill. The stream is narrower than he expected. Clear water moving over smooth stones, catching the light in small, shifting patterns. It doesn't rush. It doesn't pause. It simply keeps going. He crouches and rests his hands on his knees, watching for a moment. There's no sign explaining where it comes from. No marker pointing upstream. It just is. He unscrews the cap of his bottle and dips it into the water, filling it slowly. The bottle grows heavier in his hand. He screws the cap back on and takes a drink. The water is cold, plain, exactly what water is supposed to be. As he straightens up, a thought surfaces, simple and unsettling. How long have I been waiting to be filled? The question isn't accusing, just curious. It lands the way certain truths do quietly, when you finally stop talking over them. He thinks about the way he's been treating happiness like something that arrives from the outside, something that shows up when conditions are right, when people respond the way he hopes, when circumstances soften enough to allow him to relax. Like a cup held out, always angled forward. The stream doesn't work that way. It doesn't wait to be poured into. It doesn't pause until someone needs it. It moves because there is movement. It flows because something within it is already flowing. He sits on a flat rock by the edge, close enough to feel the coolness rising from the water. His shoulders drop slightly. He hadn't noticed how tight they were. There's a faint embarrassment in realizing how much pressure he's put on other people, on work, on future versions of himself, to supply a feeling he thought was missing. As if peace were a delivery he kept tracking, wondering why it was always delayed. The sound of water keeps going unbothered by his thoughts. He watches leaves drift into the stream, circle briefly in a slow eddy, then continue on. None of them seem to struggle. None of them try to stay where they are. He's been doing the opposite, holding still while waiting for something to arrive, holding his breath in small ways all day long. He takes another sip from the bottle, slower this time. The water settles easily. No effort required. It occurs to him that maybe happiness doesn't come from being filled. Maybe it comes from remembering that there's already a source inside one that doesn't depend on timing or approval or outcomes. Not excitement, not constant joy, just a quiet sense of enough. He stands and screws the bottle cap tighter, adjusting the strap again. The stream continues behind him, unchanged by his presence. He doesn't feel like he's learned something new. It feels more like he's stopped overlooking something obvious. As he steps back onto the main trail, his pace is different. Not slower, just less urgent. Like he's no longer racing toward a future moment that's supposed to fix the present. The path curves upward, away from the water, but the sound lingers for a while. Soft, steady. And somewhere beneath his thoughts, something begins to shift. Not because anything was added, but because he's starting to sense what was already flowing. He doesn't leave the trail right away. Instead of turning back toward the parking lot, he keeps walking, following the path as it climbs gently away from the stream. The sound of water fades, replaced by the softer rhythm of his own footsteps. Gravel shifts under his shoes. A bird flutters somewhere overhead, then goes quiet. There's a familiar restlessness in him, even now. A small urge to check his phone, to capture the moment, or at least mark it somehow. He notices the urge and lets it pass. The trail doesn't ask for proof that he's here. As he walks, his mind drifts back to the many ways he's tried to make himself feel complete. Long hours, careful planning, reading the right books, waiting for the right words from the right people. None of it was wrong exactly. It just never lasted. The sense of relief always slipped away, like water poured into a cracked cup. He slows when the path narrows. Up ahead, the trees thin and sunlight filters through in uneven patches. He steps into one of them and stops, feeling the warmth on his face. It's brief. A cloud passes and the light shifts again. The sun didn't stop shining, he thinks. It was just covered for a moment. The thought feels connected to the stream in a way he can't quite explain yet. He spent years believing that happiness is something that happens when life cooperates, when work is manageable, when relationships feel smooth, when there's nothing waiting to go wrong. As if peace requires constant agreement from the world. But the stream didn't ask the rocks to move. It didn't negotiate with fallen branches or uneven ground. It flowed around what was there, shaped by it, but not stopped by it. The movement came from within, not from permission granted outside. He sits on a fallen log and rests his elbows on his knees. The forest is quiet enough now that he can hear his own breathing, in and out. Steady. It surprises him how naturally it finds its rhythm when he stops interfering. A memory surfaces of a time he felt genuinely okay without trying. Not excited, not accomplished, just okay. He can't remember what he was doing then, only that he wasn't waiting for anything to change. That feeling had a source too. He's been treating happiness like a result, when maybe it's more like a current, something you notice when you stop standing in its way. The bottle presses lightly against his side as he shifts. It's still half full. He takes another sip, then sets it down beside him. He doesn't feel the need to finish it. The water will be there when he's thirsty again. That too feels like a small lesson, though he doesn't frame it that way. He stands and continues walking the trail, leveling out as it approaches the end. The sounds of the forest slowly give way to distant traffic, a reminder that the world he left is still waiting. Emails, conversations, responsibilities, none of them have vanished. But something is loosened. He doesn't feel like he has to arrive back there, already filled, already calm, already fixed. He can return as he is, with whatever is flowing naturally and whatever isn't. At the edge of the trail, he pauses and looks back once in the direction of the stream he can no longer hear. He doesn't feel separated from it. The movement it showed him doesn't seem confined to that place. It's in his steps now, in his breath, in the way his thoughts move through and out. He heads toward the car, the bottle tapping lightly against his hip with each step. The sound is steady, almost rhythmic, a reminder that something is already moving with him. He doesn't expect the feeling to last forever. He knows there will be days when he forgets this entirely, when he waits again, when he holds himself like an empty container. But tonight that doesn't matter. Right now he's not waiting to be filled. He's remembering where the flow begins. The house felt different after the funeral. Not emptier exactly, just quieter in a way that didn't belong to the time of day. The afternoon light still came through the kitchen window at the same angle. The refrigerator still hummed. A neighbor's car door still opened and closed somewhere down the street. All the ordinary sounds were there. And yet something fundamental had shifted. A person stood at the kitchen counter holding a mug that had gone cold. Tea forgotten. Hands wrapped around ceramic more for grounding than warmth. On the counter lay a folded program from the service, the paper already soft from being handled too many times. There had been words at the funeral, kind ones, careful ones, people saying the same sentences in slightly different ways. They're at peace now. They lived a good life. I can't imagine what you're going through. All of it meant well. None of it quite landed. Grief has a way of making language feel thin, like it can't carry the weight it's being asked to hold. What stayed wasn't the speeches. It was the quiet moments between them. The way people avoided eye contact for a second too long. The way hugs lingered, then released. The way everyone eventually went home. The door had closed. Shoes were taken off. The house returned to its usual shape. And that was when the loneliness arrived. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a deep sense that something important was missing, not just a person, but a shared understanding. A feeling that this kind of pain was somehow personal, isolating, like it had chosen this house specifically. The mind whispered questions it didn't expect. Why us? Why now? Why like this? There was no anger in the questions, just confusion, a search for footing. On the stove, a pot sat unused. The thought of cooking felt strange. Eating felt optional. The body didn't know what it needed, only that it was tired. At some point, the mug was set down. The program was unfolded, then folded again, not for reading, but for something to do with the hands. The paper made a soft sound, almost comforting in its predictability. Grief doesn't always come as waves. Sometimes it comes as stillness, a pause where everything else keeps moving and you don't. Outside, the street looked the same as it always did. Houses lined up neatly, lawns trimmed, lights beginning to turn on one by one as evening approached. Through the window you could see into other homes. Just glimpses. A family setting the table. Someone walking past with a phone pressed to their ear. A television flickering blue light against a wall. Life continuing. There was a strange comfort in that, mixed with something sharper. How could the world keep going when something so final had happened? How could other houses still be warm and noisy when this one felt so hollow? Grief often brings a second pain with it, the belief that you're alone in it, that this kind of loss has singled you out, that no one else could possibly understand this particular shape of absence. The body felt heavy, as if gravity had increased slightly, just enough to make standing longer than necessary. A cabinet door was opened. Inside, jars sat in neat rows. Rice, pasta, spices. A small jar of mustard seeds tucked into the corner, bought months ago for a recipe that never happened. The jar was taken down, then set back. Not needed. Not today. Still the image stayed. A seed so small you could lose it between your fingers. A thing that looks insignificant until you realize what it can grow into. The mind wandered not by choice, but by habit. To memories, to the last conversation, to the things that hadn't been said, to the ordinary moments that now felt precious because they couldn't happen again. There was pain there, the first kind. Clean, direct, impossible to avoid. And then there was something else layered on top. A sense of being uniquely broken. A feeling that this loss had set this house apart from all the others on the street. That was the second pain. Quieter, but heavier. Grief says, "This hurts." Isolation says, "You're the only one." The body believed it, at least for a moment. Dinner time came and went. The sky outside deepened into blue. Porch lights flicked on. Somewhere, laughter drifted faintly through an open window. The sound landed gently, then stung. Inside this house, silence pressed in. The person leaned against the counter, letting weight rest where it wanted to. Not trying to stand up straight, not trying to be strong, just letting the moment be what it was. There was no insight yet, no lesson forming, just the raw experience of absence, of love, having nowhere to go. If someone had knocked on the door, then offering wisdom or reassurance, it would have been too much. Grief doesn't want answers right away. It wants permission. Permission to be heavy. Permission to be slow. Permission to not make sense. The house held that permission quietly. Outside, more lights came on, house after house, one by one, each window glowing with its own version of evening. And without realizing it, something subtle began to shift. Not relief, not acceptance, just a noticing. Every one of those lit windows held a story. Every one of those houses would at some point know this feeling. Loss didn't belong to this house alone. The thought didn't erase the pain, it didn't shrink it, but it changed its texture slightly from sharp isolation to shared human weight. Grief wasn't a punishment. It was a passage every door would eventually open to. The mustard seed sat quietly in its jar, unremarkable, waiting. And somewhere beneath the ache, a question began to form. Not yet clear enough to answer, but clear enough to soften the edges of loneliness. If this pain visits every home, then maybe I am not as alone as it feels right now. As evening settled in the street outside softened, traffic thinned, the air cooled, porch lights stayed on steady and patient, like quiet witnesses to ordinary lives unfolding behind closed doors. Inside the house, nothing dramatic happened. No breakthrough, no sudden calm. Just a gradual easing of the sense that grief had built a wall between this home and the rest of the world. The pain was still there. That hadn't changed. Loss doesn't disappear because it's understood. It stays reshaping itself over time. But something important was beginning to loosen. The idea that this pain was unique. Grief often tells a very convincing story. No one has ever felt this exact loss in this exact way. And in one sense, that's true. Every relationship is singular. Every absence has its own shape. But the experience of loss itself is deeply shared even when it feels unbearably personal. That's what makes it so heavy, and also what makes it human. The person moved slowly through the kitchen, turning off unused lights, rinsing the forgotten mug, setting it upside down on the drying rack. Small actions, familiar motions. They didn't fix anything. They just brought the body back into the present moment, one movement at a time. Outside, across the street, a window went dark. Somewhere else, another light stayed on late. Lives moving at different rhythms. Joy in some rooms, worry in others. Grief, too, behind more doors than anyone could count. No house is spared forever. That thought landed gently, not as a warning, as a recognition. Loss is not a mistake. It's not a punishment. It's not something that went wrong. It's what happens when love exists. The story of the mustard seed doesn't say grief can be avoided. It says it is shared. That death and the pain it brings visits every household eventually. Not all at once, not in the same way, but without exception. The idea doesn't take the pain away. It does something quieter. It returns grief to the world. Instead of carrying it alone as if it were proof of isolation, the pain becomes part of a larger human pattern. Something that has been felt before. Something that will be felt again. Something that doesn't mean you've been singled out. That realization doesn't rush in like comfort. It arrives slowly, like dusk. Gradual, almost unnoticeable at first. The person stood by the window again, looking out at the row of houses. Some with curtains drawn, some open. Each one holding its own private history of love and loss, most of it invisible from the outside. It was strangely grounding. Grief had made the world feel smaller, earlier narrowed down to this one house, this one absence. Now the world felt wider again. Still painful, but less suffocating. There was room to breathe inside the pain. The mustard seed jar came back to mind, not because it offered hope in a dramatic sense, but because of what it represented. a reminder that even the smallest things can carry immense meaning, that growth and loss are intertwined, that nothing precious comes without vulnerability. The seed itself is insignificant. It doesn't announce what it will become. It just is. Grief is similar. It doesn't come with instructions. It doesn't promise transformation. It simply arrives when love has nowhere else to go. And in that way, it connects people more than it separates them. Later, the lights in the kitchen were turned off. The house settled into its nighttime sounds, the kind that only appear when activity stops, the soft creak of cooling walls, the distant hum of appliances, the faint rush of air through vents. In the quiet, the absence was still felt. A chair left empty, a voice missing from memory. That didn't change, but the sense of being alone with it had shifted. Somewhere else tonight, someone else was standing in their kitchen feeling something similar. Somewhere else, a different house was holding the same heavy stillness. Different names, different stories. The same human ache. Grief hadn't chosen this house. It had simply arrived here as it does everywhere. That understanding didn't close the wound, but it kept it from becoming a wall. The night moved on, indifferent but gentle. Time continued not to erase but to carry. And in that ordinary continuation, there was a quiet truth. You don't walk through loss alone, even when it feels that way. Every house has known this knock. Every heart in time learns how to open the door. It started the way it usually does now. Not with shouting, not with a fight. Just a screen glowing in the dark and a feeling that something needs to be answered. The living room was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels louder at night. The TV was off. A lamp in the corner cast a soft circle of light over the couch and a coffee table that still held a mug from earlier. Outside the window, a few cars passed their headlights sliding across the walls and disappearing. The phone buzzed once, then again. A message, a comment, a small thing technically. One line from someone who didn't know the full story, didn't know the effort, didn't know the context. But somehow they had confidence anyway. Enough confidence to be careless. The person on the couch read it once, then again slower. The words didn't change, but the body did. The chest tightened. The stomach dropped slightly. A warm rush rose up the neck like a match being struck. There's a certain kind of anger that doesn't feel like anger. It feels like justice. It feels like if you don't respond, you're letting something slide. It feels like silence equals weakness. It feels like you're being erased unless you write yourself back into the conversation. The thumbs hovered over the keyboard. At first, the reply was simple, short, controlled. Then it got sharper. A sentence was added, then another. Something clever, something cutting. The kind of line that would make the other person pause and feel the sting. The heart sped up just a little, not from fear, but from focus. The body narrowing in on a target. This part always felt like power. But then in the middle of typing, the person noticed their own breathing. It was thin, high in the chest, like the body was preparing for impact. not their impact, their own. The phone screen reflected in the dark window like a small square moon. The room around it stayed calm, indifferent. The couch supported the weight. The lamp continued to glow. Nothing in the space agreed that this was an emergency, and still the mind insisted it was. A memory surfaced from a long time ago. Not from childhood, but from a backyard somewhere. Maybe a friend's house, maybe a cousin's. The details didn't matter. Someone had been throwing a boomerang. It looked like a toy, harmless, but it didn't move like a toy. It flew out with confidence, curved through the air, and then came back fast. The first time it came back beautifully, landing almost where it started. The second time it returned lower. It clipped someone's arm. Not a serious injury, but enough to make everyone suddenly cautious. It wasn't the throw outward that hurt, it was the return. That image now sat beside the unfinished message on the phone. The person paused with their thumbs still hovering. The anger hadn't faded. The urge to hit send was still strong. It felt clean and satisfying in the mind, like snapping something into place, but the body didn't feel clean. The body felt like it was bracing. A quiet question rose up, not as a moral warning, but as a practical one. What happens in me after I send this because the other person might feel embarrassed for 5 seconds? They might not. They might reply, or they might ignore it. They might even enjoy the fight. But the person on the couch would still be here. Still in this room. Still in this body. Still with a nervous system that now had a reason to stay awake. The reply on the screen suddenly looked less like strength and more like fuel. The mind tried to justify it. They deserve it. They started it. They should learn. And maybe some of that was true. But truth doesn't always equal peace. The person deleted one sentence, then another. The message got shorter, then sharper again, then softer, then empty. The cursor blinked in the text box like a steady heartbeat, patient and quiet. The phone buzzed again, another notification from somewhere else, another tiny tug. The world was full of tugs like this now. Little hooks that could pull you into someone else's mood in seconds. The person set the phone face down on the couch for a moment, as if placing a hot object onto fabric. The body exhaled without being told. The shoulders lowered slightly. Anger still lived in the chest, but it had shifted. It no longer felt like a weapon waiting to be used. It felt like heat that needed somewhere to go. The person reached for the mug on the table. Cold now. The smell of old coffee. A reminder that time had passed while the mind kept spinning in place. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. A dog barked once and stopped. The world kept moving with or without the argument. The phone stayed face down. Not because forgiveness was achieved, not because the person suddenly became above it all, just because in that moment it became clear throwing the boomerang doesn't only aim outward, it always comes back. The phone stayed face down longer than expected. Not out of discipline, but because nothing urgent rose up to replace it. The room felt unchanged. Same lamp, same couch, same quiet hum of the night moving outside the window. But inside the body, there was a slight shift, like pressure being released from a sealed container. The anger hadn't disappeared. It lingered warm and restless, moving through the chest and shoulders. But without the screen in hand, it didn't know where to aim itself. That was when the return began. Not dramatic, not immediate. It showed up as a familiar restlessness, a need to keep thinking, to replay what had almost been said, to imagine how it might have landed, to picture the other person's reaction, whether they'd felt embarrassed, corrected, or quietly defeated. Even without sending the message, the mind tried to throw it again. This was the part people rarely talk about. The boomerang doesn't always come back through action. Sometimes it returns through rumination. The body noticed first. The jaw tightened again. The breath shortened. The shoulders crept up as if preparing for another round. The person shifted position on the couch, adjusting the pillow behind their back. The fabric rustled softly. The small movement helped. Not much, but enough to bring awareness back into the body. A thought arrived, simple and grounding. I'm still holding it. The boomerang wasn't in the air anymore. It hadn't been thrown. But it was still in the hand, ready. The realization didn't come with blame, just clarity. Anger often promises resolution, but what it really delivers is continuation. As long as the argument stays alive, inside the nervous system doesn't know it's safe. It stays alert, scanning for the next cue. Sleep comes late. Muscles don't fully rest. Even silence feels watchful. The person reached for the phone again, this time without flipping it over, just feeling its weight through the fabric of the couch. Solid, inert, not demanding anything. There was a memory of other times this had happened. Other nights spent rehearsing messages. Other mornings waking up tired even when no words had been exchanged. The cost had always been paid quietly in energy, in mood and patience the next day. Forgiveness seen from this angle wasn't moral. It was economical. Every minute spent circling the same grievance took something. Focus, ease, rest. It didn't matter who was right if the bill kept arriving. The person stood up and carried the mug to the sink. The sound of ceramic touching metal was dull and ordinary. Water ran briefly, rinsing the residue away. The mug was placed upside down on the drying rack. Done. Simple actions have a way of ending things. Back in the living room, the lamp was dimmed slightly. The light softened, pulling shadows closer. The room felt less like a stage and more like a place to land. The anger was still present, but it had changed shape. No longer sharp. More like a dull heat slowly cooling as it spread out. The boomerang image returned gentler now, not flying through the air, just resting on the ground, harmless once it wasn't thrown. There was a quiet understanding that not every feeling needs an outlet in the world. Some feelings are meant to move through the body and leave. The phone was picked up and placed on the table screen, down out of reach. Not hidden, just not central. The person sat back on the couch, letting their weight sink in. The breath found its way lower, fuller. The mind drifted not toward the argument, but toward nothing in particular. There would be other comments, other misunderstandings, other moments when throwing the boomerang would feel tempting. But for now, Choosing not to throw it wasn't weakness. It was choosing not to be hit by it later. The room stayed quiet. The night kept moving. And somewhere in that ordinary stillness, the body learned what peace feels like when it isn't borrowed from winning. There are moments when the mind feels crowded, not because anything is wrong, but because everything wants attention at the same time. Thoughts line up, overlap, interrupt each other. One leads to the next so quickly, it's hard to tell where the first one even began. It often happens while driving at night. The road stretches forward dark and steady. Street lights pass at a regular pace, each one appearing glowing briefly, then slipping behind. The radio is off. The car moves smoothly, almost on its own. Hands rest lightly on the steering wheel, familiar with this route, not needing instructions. Above the windshield, the sky is wide, not perfectly clear. There are clouds drifting across it, thin in some places, heavier in others. They move slowly, quietly changing shape without asking permission. None of them stay for long. At first, they barely register. Attention is still busy elsewhere. A conversation from earlier in the day replays itself. A sentence that could have been said better. A decision that might matter later. The mind jumps ahead, then loops back, then jumps again. It feels important, urgent, like something needs to be solved before the drive ends. Then at a red light, there's a pause. The car stops. The engine idles. The light above glows steadily. And without trying to, the eyes lift slightly, catching the movement of clouds against the night sky. They're just there. No struggle, no rush, no effort to hold their shape. A thought passes through the mind, almost like a whisper. Those are just clouds. It's not a deep insight. Not something to write down or remember. Just an observation. Simple, obvious, and yet it changes something. The next thought that comes doesn't feel as solid as before. It shows up, makes its point, then fades a little at the edges. Another thought follows, then another. But instead of piling on top of each other, they start to feel more like the clouds overhead, passing through a space that isn't affected by them. The sky doesn't tighten when clouds appear. It doesn't get anxious. It doesn't try to push them away or hold on to them longer than necessary. It just stays open. Most people live as if their thoughts are the sky itself. As if every idea, every worry, every mental image defines who they are. So when the clouds get heavy, the whole inner world feels heavy too. But driving under the night sky makes something quietly clear. The clouds move. The sky remains. A truck passes in the opposite lane, headlights flashing briefly through the windshield. The light changes. The car moves again. The road continues. Thoughts still appear. Planning, remembering, imagining. That doesn't stop, but there's more space around them now. They're noticed, not followed. Seen, not argued with. A worry floats by. What if tomorrow doesn't go well? It's there for a moment. Then it drifts. Another thought, I should have handled that differently. It lingers a bit longer, then thins out. Nothing is forced. Nothing is corrected. The mind isn't being trained or disciplined. It's simply being observed from a different place. Like standing back far enough to see the sky instead of staring at a single cloud. There's a subtle relief in that shift. Not excitement, not happiness, just relief. The kind that comes when pressure eases slightly, when effort drops without collapsing. The drive continues. Familiar turns, familiar signs. The body handles it all without commentary. Muscles know what to do. Breath finds its own rhythm. Overthinking usually feels like being inside the clouds, surrounded, limited, unable to see beyond what's right in front of you. But moments like this remind you that there's always more space than the mind suggests. The sky doesn't need to be cleared to be blue. It's blue even when you can't see it. And the mind doesn't need to get rid of thoughts to be at ease. It only needs to stop mistaking them for the whole picture. As the car turns onto a quieter street, the clouds thin out. A patch of open sky appears darker and deeper than the rest. It's been there the entire time, unnoticed, unchanged. The thoughts keep moving. But something underneath stays still. The car slows as it turns onto a quieter road. Fewer streetlights here, longer stretches of darkness between them. The kind of road that feels different at night, even though it's the same one driven every other day. The sky opens up a little more. There are still clouds drifting through, but now they're easier to see. Their edges glow faintly when they pass in front of the moon, then fade back into the dark. They don't seem in a hurry. They don't seem lost. They just move, responding to currents no one inside the car needs to understand. Thoughts continue in much the same way. They arrive, they change shape. They overlap for a moment, then separate again. Some feel heavier than others. Some pass quickly. A few linger, hanging in place like thick clouds that refuse to thin out. But even the heavier ones don't feel as overwhelming anymore. There's a growing sense of distance, not emotional distance, but perspective. The kind that lets things exist without being pulled into them, like watching weather from indoors instead of standing out in the rain. A familiar worry shows up again. The kind that usually grabs attention immediately. The mind starts to lean toward it almost automatically, ready to engage, to solve, to prepare. Then it pauses. The cloud is noticed. That's all. No arguing with it. No pushing it away. No trying to make it disappear. Just noticing that it's there and that it's not the sky itself. Without resistance, the thought loses some of its urgency. It's still present, but it no longer demands a response. It floats alongside the drive instead of taking control of it. The car passes a small park. Empty swings move slightly in the breeze. A single street lamp lights the sidewalk. Everything feels quiet, held in place for the night. This is often how the mind settles, not by becoming empty, but by becoming wide. When attention is narrow, every thought feels intense, important, personal. But when attention widens, thoughts are given room to breathe. They don't need to be contained or fixed. They can come and go on their own. The sky doesn't select which clouds are allowed. It doesn't label them good or bad. It doesn't rush them along or ask them to stay. It simply remains. The body senses this too. The grip on the steering wheel softens slightly. Shoulders drop. The jaw unclenches without instruction. Breathing deepens in a way that feels unplanned. Nothing has changed externally. The road is the same. The destination hasn't moved. Tomorrow is still tomorrow. But the inner experience is different. Overthinking feeds on identification, the belief that every thought needs to be owned, answered, or acted on. When that belief loosens even slightly, the mind finds space it forgot existed. A cloud thickens overhead. For a moment, the moon disappears completely. Darkness deepens. Then slowly the moon reappears at the edge. Light returns. The cloud continues on its way, leaving no trace behind. The sky didn't lose anything while it was hidden. It didn't need to struggle to come back. There's comfort in that. The car pulls into a familiar driveway. The engine turns off. Silence settles in deeper now, without the hum of movement. The sky is still there above the roof, unseen but unchanged. Thoughts are still present too. A few last ones hover at the edges of awareness. But they feel less solid than before, less convincing, like clouds seen from far away. The door opens. The night air feels cool against the skin. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once, then goes quiet. The world seems to be resting. Inside, lights remain off. No need to brighten the space. Darkness feels friendly now, not empty. The sky hasn't gone anywhere, and neither has the space behind the thoughts. They'll return. The clouds always do. Different shapes, different densities, different moods. That's not a problem. What matters is remembering this. You don't have to chase them, fight them, or become them. They can move across you, and you can remain, just like the sky. The morning is colder than expected. Not the sharp kind that shocks you awake, but the steady, quiet cold that settles into everything. The parking lot outside the grocery store is almost empty. A thin layer of frost clings to windshields and shopping carts, turning ordinary metal into something briefly delicate. She sits in her car with the engine running, hands wrapped around the steering wheel, waiting for the heater to catch up. The windows are fogged just enough to blur the edges of the world outside. She could leave now. She doesn't need anything from the store. But she stays, letting the car warm, letting herself arrive. Across the lot near the edge where the pavement meets a strip of dirt and trees stands a tall pine. It doesn't belong here. Not really. It's taller than the others, darker. Its needles thick and full, even in this cold. The nearby trees have gone bare, branches thin and exposed. But the pine holds its color without effort. No announcement, no apology. She's noticed it before, usually in passing. Today she really looks. The snow from the night before still clings to its branches. Some of it has slipped off, fallen to the ground in uneven piles. But most of it remains resting there lightly, as if it's been allowed rather than endured. She exhales slowly. For the past year, she's been waiting for things to soften, waiting for life to feel more cooperative, waiting for support to show up in the ways she imagined it would. waiting for someone to notice how much she's been holding together on her own. She doesn't say this out loud. She barely says it to herself. But it's there underneath everything she does. The cold has made her cautious, careful. She's learned how to keep moving without slipping, how to brace without freezing. Still, there's a quiet ache that comes from feeling like you're the only green thing in a season that doesn't seem to care. The pine doesn't look lonely. It stands apart, yes, but not abandoned. It doesn't lean toward the other trees. It doesn't wait for them to change. It grows according to something older than weather. She thinks about how often she's delayed her own steadiness, telling herself she'll feel grounded once conditions improve. Once someone agrees, once the timing is right, once the season changes, as if she needs permission to stand. A shopping cart rattles across the lot, pushed by an employee in a heavy jacket. The sound echoes briefly, then fades. The world continues with or without her participation. She turns off the engine and steps out of the car. The cold bites at her face, immediately clean and honest. Her breath shows. She pulls her coat tighter shoulders, lifting out of habit. The ground crunches beneath her boots as she walks a few steps closer to the tree. Not all the way, just enough to feel its presence more clearly. There's sap on the trunk, hardened and amber-colored. The bark is rough under her gloved hand, solid. She notices how the pine hasn't waited for spring to be itself. It hasn't dropped its needles to match the others. It hasn't gone dormant to blend in. It stays green because that's what it does. Not as resistance, as nature. There's something both comforting and unsettling about that. She spent so much time adapting, softening when needed, withdrawing when it felt safer, changing her tone, her pace, her expectations, so she wouldn't stand out too much, wouldn't ask for too much, wouldn't be a burden in a hard season. Useful strategies, necessary ones. But they've started to feel heavy. She steps back, the cold already seeping through the soles of her boots. The pine remains where it is snow-dusted and steady, not asking her to learn anything from it. And yet, something shifts in her chest. Not a surge of confidence, not resolve, just a quiet recognition. She doesn't need a better season to be herself. She doesn't need warmth, approval, or ideal conditions to stand upright in her own life. The heater hums as she gets back into the car. The windshield slowly clears. The pine comes back into sharp focus, framed now by clean glass and pale winter light. She sits there a moment longer, hands resting loosely in her lap. The day will ask things of her soon enough. Decisions, interactions, small negotiations she's learned to manage well. But for now, there's this. A tree that stays green without asking spring for permission. And the beginning of a thought she hasn't finished yet. She finally pulls out of the parking lot, tires humming softly against the cold pavement. The grocery store fades behind her, replaced by quiet streets and pale winter light. The pine disappears from view, but the image of it stays with her longer than she expects. At the next red light, she notices how her shoulders are still raised, braced as if the cold followed her inside the car. She lets them drop just a little. The heater hums steadily now, filling the space with warmth she didn't have to work for. For a long time, she's believed strength meant flexibility, the ability to bend, to adapt quickly, to read the room and adjust herself before anyone had to ask. And that belief kept her safe. It helped her survive moments when standing out would have cost too much. But survival has a way of overstaying its welcome. Somewhere along the way, flexibility turned into constant self-editing. Strength became quiet endurance. And endurance slowly turned into a habit of waiting for things to ease before she allowed herself to be fully present. The pine didn't wait. It didn't resist the snow either. It held it. Let it rest on its branches until gravity decided otherwise. No drama, no collapse. Just a steady relationship with what arrived. She thinks about the last few months, the conversations where she swallowed words because it didn't feel like the right time. The plans she postponed because the support wasn't there yet. The way she's been living slightly folded in on herself, conserving energy, hoping the season would change soon. There's nothing wrong with hoping, but there's something tiring about postponing your own solidity. The light turns green. She drives on. At home, she sets her keys on the counter and shrugs off her coat. The house is quiet. Not empty, just still. She makes herself tea and waits for the kettle to boil, watching steam gather and drift upward. Outside the kitchen window, the same winter sky stretches overhead. Pale, open, unconcerned with how anyone feels about it. She carries the mug to the table and sits down. The chair creaks softly beneath her weight. It holds. No adjustment needed. She realizes how often she's mistaken standing alone for being unsupported. As if steadiness only counts when it's witnessed. As if being rooted without applause somehow makes it less real. The pine doesn't have an audience. It stands green because that's how it meets the world. Not to prove resilience. Not to inspire, just because that's its nature. The tea warms her hands. She takes a slow sip. The heat spreads easily without effort. She doesn't rush the moment. There's nothing she needs to prepare for right now. She thinks about what it would mean to stop waiting for ideal conditions. To stop negotiating her presence with the weather of other people's moods, to allow herself to be consistent, even when things around her feel uncertain or cold. Not rigid, just rooted. That idea feels different from the pressure she's known. It doesn't ask her to harden. It doesn't demand constant effort. It suggests something quieter. Something more honest, being herself even when it's not mirrored back. She sets the mug down and rests her hands on the table. They're steady, warm now. The day ahead still exists, so do its challenges. But they no longer feel like reasons to disappear. She doesn't make a promise to change. She doesn't rehearse a new version of herself. She simply notices that she's done waiting to be supported before she stands. Outside, the light shifts again. The morning moves on. Somewhere, snow slides from a branch and lands softly on the ground, unnoticed. And in the quiet of her kitchen, something settles into place. She can be green in winter. She can stand without spring. She can be herself fully without asking the season to agree. The rest will change when it does. She doesn't need to. Fear is useful. That's the part people forget. It shows up fast. It sharpens the senses. It tells the body, pay attention. When something is truly dangerous, fear can save your life. It helps you move quickly, choose carefully, survive. The problem starts when fear stays long after the crossing is over. Late at night, a car sat in a drive-through line, headlights dimmed, radio off. The menu board glowed ahead, colors slightly washed out, pictures of food that looked better than it would taste. The line moved slowly. One car, then another. Long pauses in between. Inside the car, someone waited with both hands on the steering wheel, fingers wrapped tighter than necessary. The body leaned forward just a little, as if preparing for something important. Earlier that day, a decision had been made. Not out loud, not officially, just a quiet internal shift. The kind that doesn't feel like relief, but like stepping onto uncertain ground. A job application had been sent. A lease had been looked at. A conversation had been postponed long enough. Nothing dramatic had happened yet. No answer had come back. No door had opened or closed. But the fear had already arrived. What if this is a mistake? What if I can't handle what comes next? What if I should have stayed where I was? Fear doesn't wait for confirmation. It arrives early, rehearsing worst-case scenarios like it's doing you a favor. The car inched forward. The brake was pressed, released, pressed again. The engine hummed softly. Somewhere in the distance, a siren passed, rising and falling without urgency. The body felt tight, alert, ready. That readiness had once been helpful. Back when staying meant safety. Back when leaving meant risk. Fear had helped then. It had kept things intact. It had acted like a raft, something to cling to while crossing unfamiliar water. But now the crossing was already happening. The raft was still being held. The mind kept replaying old reasons, the logic that had once justified caution, the memories of past failures, the moments that proved, see, this is why you shouldn't move too fast. Fear loves evidence. It collects it carefully. But fear doesn't update easily. It doesn't check whether the river has already been crossed. It keeps floating, asking to be held long after dry land is under your feet. The drive-through speaker crackled. A tired voice asked for the order. For a moment, the words didn't come. The body hesitated, as if even ordering food required certainty. Then the order was placed. Simple, automatic, familiar. The voice repeated it back, correctly. No problems, a small thing. But the body noticed. Not everything unfamiliar goes wrong. The car rolled forward again. The steering wheel was released for a second, then held again. The shoulders lifted, then dropped slightly. Fear shifted shape. It wasn't screaming. It was whispering now. Don't mess this up. Be careful. Hold on. Fear doesn't ask to be thrown away. It asks to be trusted. And that's what makes it hard to let go. Because fear has a history. It has proof. It has stories where it was right. But fear is a tool, not a home. A raft helps you cross water. It is not meant to be carried on your back once you reach the shore. Carrying it afterward doesn't make you safer. it makes you tired. The line moved faster now. The window ahead lowered. Payment was made. A receipt printed with a short mechanical sigh. The person took the receipt, fingers brushing paper, noticing how small the moment was. How ordinary. How nothing collapsed. The future was still unknown. That hadn't changed. But the body was starting to feel something else beneath the fear. Weight. Fear had weight when it stayed too long. It pressed down on the chest. It shortened the breath. It narrowed vision until only risk could be seen. Fear used properly is sharp and brief. Fear carried endlessly becomes dull and exhausting. The car pulled forward to wait for the order. Red brake lights reflected off metal. The smell of fried food drifted faintly through the window. The mind jumped ahead again. What if I regret this decision? What if I'm not ready? What if I fail? Those questions weren't evil. They weren't wrong. They were just late. They belonged to the crossing, not the shore. The body shifted in the seat. One hand left the steering wheel and rested on the thigh. A small movement, almost unconscious. But it changed something. The grip loosened. Fear didn't disappear. It rarely does. But it moved from center stage to the edge of awareness. Like a raft bobbing nearby, still visible, still available, but no longer being dragged forward. The order was handed through the window. Warm bag, familiar weight, a polite exchange, a brief "have a good night," and then the car pulled away. The drive-through faded behind. The road opened up ahead. Dark, quiet, ordinary. The crossing wasn't complete yet. Life would still ask for courage, still bring uncertainty, still offer moments where fear would be needed again. But for now there was dry ground beneath the tires. The raft had done its job. And for the first time that night, it didn't need to be carried any further. The road after the drive-through was quiet. Street lights passed in slow intervals, each one briefly illuminating the windshield before slipping behind. The city thinned out. Houses gave way to longer stretches of dark, broken only by the occasional late-night bus or a car heading the opposite direction. The food sat untouched in the passenger seat. Not because there was no appetite, but because the body was still unwinding from something that had nothing to do with hunger. Fear leaves a residue. Even when nothing bad happens, the body takes time to realize it's allowed to stand down. Muscles don't unclench all at once. Breath doesn't deepen on command. The nervous system releases its grip in stages, checking again and again to make sure it's safe. That's how you know fear had been working hard. Fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means something mattered. The decision made earlier still existed. The application was still sent. The possibility of change was still real. Nothing had been undone by a quiet drive or a bag of food. But something important had shifted in how fear was being held. Earlier, fear had been steering. Now it was riding along. That difference matters. Fear is excellent at getting you through something. It's terrible at telling you when you've already arrived. Once a threat passes, fear doesn't announce its exit. It just keeps watch, waiting for the next reason to justify itself. If you let it, it will turn every unfamiliar step into an emergency. The mind returned to old patterns automatically. Maybe I should double-check everything. Maybe I should prepare for the worst. Maybe I should slow this down. These thoughts weren't hostile. They were protective. But protection that never rests becomes control. And control over time becomes its own kind of danger. The body noticed the road again, the steady hum of tires, the gentle sway of the car staying in its lane. Nothing dramatic, nothing demanding immediate action, just movement. Fear had once been necessary to step onto that movement, to leave the familiar bank and enter the water. Without it, the decision might never have been made. But now the water was behind. The trouble with fear is not that it exists. It's that we forget to put it down. People often talk about overcoming fear as if fear must be defeated, pushed away, proved wrong. But fear doesn't need to be conquered to be released. It needs to be thanked and then excused. Thank you for getting me this far. I don't need you to carry me anymore. That kind of letting go isn't dramatic. It doesn't look like confidence. It looks like loosening your shoulders when you didn't realize they were tense. It looks like breathing out without planning to. The food bag rustled slightly as the car turned. The smell filled the space, grounding and ordinary. Something about it brought the body back into the present, into now, where nothing was chasing nothing, was collapsing. Fear lives in the future. Relief lives in the present. The present moment didn't ask for answers. It didn't ask for certainty. It didn't ask for guarantees. It only asked to be noticed. The car slowed at a red light, stopped. Waited. Another small test. Nothing bad happened. The light turned green. The car moved on. Fear often insists that stopping is dangerous, that pausing invites disaster. But most of life happens in these quiet stops, at lights in lines, in moments where nothing is required. Those are the moments where you realize the raft is heavier than you thought. Carrying fear after it's no longer needed doesn't make you prepared. It makes you tired. It drains energy that could be used for seeing clearly, responding wisely, or simply resting. Fear is meant to be picked up when the water is rough, not dragged across land forever. The road eventually curved toward home. Familiar turns appeared. The body recognized them before the mind did. Muscles relaxed further, sensing known territory. The future was still uncertain. That hadn't changed. But uncertainty no longer felt like drowning. It felt like standing on ground you hadn't mapped yet. There's a quiet courage in knowing when to put something down. Not because it failed, but because it succeeded. Fear had done its job. It helped the crossing begin. It sharpened attention. It made the step possible. Now it was time to set it on the shore. Not forever. Fear would be needed again someday. Another river would come. Another decision would ask for its help. But not tonight. Tonight the raft could rest. And with it resting, the body could finally feel the weight of the ground beneath its feet, solid, ordinary, and enough for now. Some days don't end when the work is done. The body comes home, but the weight comes with it. The parking lot is nearly empty. The sky has already darkened, that deep blue that shows up just before night fully settles in. The engine is turned off, but the hands stay on the steering wheel a moment longer than necessary. Not because there's somewhere else to go, just because standing up feels heavier than usual. The door opens. Cool air moves in. A bag is lifted from the passenger seat, heavier than it looks. Inside it are ordinary things: a laptop, a notebook, a charger, a water bottle. Nothing dramatic, nothing that should feel like a burden. And yet the shoulder tightens as the strap is pulled on. The walk to the apartment is short, familiar, taken hundreds of times before. But tonight, each step feels deliberate. The bag presses against the side of the body, a steady reminder of the day that came before it. There's a memory of something read once long ago. A simple image, someone carrying a bundle of firewood across a river. The river isn't wide. The crossing doesn't take long. But instead of setting the wood down after reaching the other side, the person keeps carrying it. All the way home, all night, as if the crossing never really ended. At the time, it sounded symbolic, abstract, easy to dismiss. Now it feels familiar. Inside the apartment is quiet. Shoes are kicked off near the door. The bag is placed on the floor, but the body doesn't straighten right away. Shoulders stay hunched, jaw clenched, as if the weight is still there even after being set down. That's how it often works. The mind keeps carrying what the body no longer needs to hold. A conversation from earlier replays itself while the lights are turned on. A decision that didn't feel quite right resurfaces while water is poured into a glass. Tomorrow's responsibilities line up neatly as the jacket is hung, each one waiting its turn to be considered. The river has already been crossed, but the firewood is still on the back. Overthinking thrives in this space, the space where yesterday bleeds into today, and today stretches too far into tomorrow. Where nothing is actually happening yet, everything feels active. The kitchen light hums softly. The refrigerator clicks on and off. Familiar sounds that usually signal safety, routine, rest. But the mind doesn't respond to those signals right away. Instead, it keeps checking the load, recounting it, making sure nothing has been dropped, as if putting the burden down might mean something important is lost. There's a moment standing at the counter when the weight is noticed directly, not the physical weight of the bag, it's already on the floor, but the internal weight. The subtle pressure behind the eyes, the tightness in the chest, the shallow quality of the breath. It's clear now the crossing is over. No one needs to be on guard anymore. No one needs to balance on slippery stones or watch the current. The danger, if there ever was one, has passed. And still, the load remains. This is the part most people miss. They assume rest means collapsing, lying down, turning off the lights. But real rest often begins earlier than that, in the moment when something unnecessary is finally set down. The bag is nudged further into the corner with a foot. Out of the way, not discarded, just not being carried. The body responds slowly. A small exhale escapes without being planned. Shoulders lower a fraction of an inch, the neck rolls slightly, releasing tension that had gone unnoticed. Thoughts don't stop. They rarely do. But they change tone, Instead of pushing forward, they circle back. Instead of demanding action, they ask quieter questions. Do I really need to carry this right now? Is this part of today or part of yesterday? The answer doesn't arrive as words. It arrives as a sensation, a feeling of timing being off, of effort being misplaced, like carrying firewood long after the fire is out. There's no rule saying you have to drop everything the moment you cross the river. Habits don't work that way. The body learns through repetition, through noticing, through small, ordinary pauses like this one. The apartment remains still. Nothing urgent breaks the moment. No alarms, no messages. Just the quiet invitation to stop carrying what doesn't belong to this side of the river. And for the first time all day, that invitation doesn't feel threatening. It feels reasonable. The apartment stays quiet in a way that feels intentional, not empty. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask questions, the kind that lets things unfold at their own pace. The body moves through familiar motions. A glass is rinsed and placed upside down on the counter. A light is turned off in the hallway. Each action is small, ordinary, and somehow grounding, as if the body is gently reminding itself where it is now, not at the river, here. And yet the mind still carries pieces of the crossing. It brings up unfinished conversations, tasks that didn't get completed, moments that could have gone differently. None of them are urgent. None of them require action tonight. But they line up anyway, waiting to be carried forward just in case. This is how the load sneaks across the river. Not all at once. One thought at a time. There's a moment of standing still in the middle of the room. Nothing is being done. Nothing is being avoided. Just standing. Feeling the weight of the body settle evenly into both feet. It becomes obvious then how much effort has been used to keep holding things together. How often the mind assumes that letting go means being careless or irresponsible or unprepared. But setting something down isn't the same as losing it. Firewood is useful when there's a fire to feed. It keeps you warm. It protects you. It matters. But once you've crossed the river, once the fire is no longer needed, carrying it further doesn't add safety. It only adds strain. The mind has a hard time trusting that distinction. So it keeps carrying yesterday into today, and today into tomorrow, just to be safe. The body feels this first. A dull ache between the shoulders, a heaviness behind the eyes, a breath that never quite reaches the bottom of the lungs. There's a chair nearby. It's pulled out and sat in slowly, not collapsing, just allowing the muscles to release their grip. The back meets the support without resistance this time. Another breath leaves the body longer than the last. Thoughts still come. One suggests reviewing tomorrow's schedule. Another wonders if something important was forgotten. They sound reasonable, familiar, convincing. But instead of picking them up, they're noticed as part of the load. Not problems, just firewood. There's no need to throw it away, no need to judge it, just no need to keep carrying it right now. The mind doesn't fully agree at first. It rarely does. Habits protest quietly. They ask, what if? and just in case, and better safe than sorry. But the body has already decided. It stays seated, shoulders soften further, the jaw loosens, breathing deepens without instruction. Without constant reinforcement, the thoughts begin to lose their urgency. They're still there, but they don't feel as heavy in the hands. Like setting a bundle down for a moment and realizing how much lighter everything feels. This is the part that often surprises people. Letting go doesn't require effort. Holding on does. The river doesn't follow you home. The crossing ends whether you notice it or not. It's only the habit of carrying that continues. The room grows dimmer as another light is turned off. Shadows soften the edges of furniture. Nothing looks demanding anymore, just present. There's a sense of being on the right side of things, not morally, not emotionally, but physically. Like standing on solid ground after balancing for too long. The mind drifts, but it drifts more slowly now. Thoughts stretch out less compact, less insistent. They don't stack up the way they did earlier. They pass through, then leave space behind them. Tomorrow will come when it comes. Yesterday has already passed. Neither needs to be carried across this moment. The chair creaks slightly as weight shifts again. Feet rest flat on the floor. Hands rest open on the thighs, empty. Nothing important is being ignored. Nothing essential is being dropped. The firewood is still there, leaning safely on the far bank of the river where it belongs. And here on this side, there's nothing left to carry. Just the quiet weight of being where you are. The car was parked, engine off, lights dimmed. The parking lot had thinned out, most people already gone home. A few streetlights buzzed overhead, casting pale circles on the asphalt. The dashboard clock glowed quietly, marking time without urgency. The person sat there longer than necessary. One hand rested on the steering wheel. The other reached up and unclipped the name badge, letting it fall into the cup holder with a soft plastic click. That sound felt louder than it should have, final. Like punctuation at the end of a sentence that hadn't gone the way it was supposed to. The meeting replayed again, not as a full scene, but as fragments. A phrase, a look, a pause that landed wrong. The kind of moment that leaves a bruise you can't point to, but feel every time you breathe a little deeper. Anger hadn't come first. Shock had. Then confusion. Then the slow burn of something unfair settling in. The mind wanted answers. Why did they say it like that? Did they mean it? Was it intentional or careless or something else entirely? Each question tightened the chest a bit more. Each replay drove the arrow deeper. The person leaned back in the seat, staring through the windshield at nothing in particular. A car passed on the street beyond the lot. Tires hissed briefly against pavement, then disappeared. There was a memory not personal, but familiar. A story heard many times, told in different ways. Someone is struck by an arrow, poisoned. Instead of pulling it out, they demand to know who fired it, where they came from, why they aimed, what kind of bow they used. Meanwhile, the poison keeps spreading. At the time, the story had sounded obvious, almost simplistic. Of course, you remove the arrow first. Of course, you save yourself before asking questions. But sitting there now with the badge cooling against plastic and the body still tight, the story felt less theoretical. The arrow wasn't literal. It was the comment, the tone, the moment of being made small. And the poison wasn't coming from the other person anymore. It was coming from the hours spent replaying it, searching for intent, sharpening blame. The body didn't care who fired it. The body only knew it had been hurt. A breath came in shallow. Another followed a little deeper. The steering wheel creaked softly as fingers tightened, then loosened again. There was an urge to text someone, to vent, to name names, to get agreement that this was wrong, that it shouldn't have happened, that anger was justified. Justification can feel like relief, but it's a short-lived one. The phone stayed in the pocket. Instead, the person noticed the ache in the shoulders, the slight tremor in the hands, the dull pressure behind the eyes. These weren't signs of moral clarity. They were signs of stress. The arrow was still in. Forgiveness hadn't entered the picture yet. It felt too far away, too premature. What felt closer was something quieter, the need to stop the damage. The badge was picked up, turned over once, then placed back down. The name on it didn't feel relevant right now. Titles didn't either. All that mattered was the fact that something inside had been pierced, and ignoring it wouldn't make it go away. The mind tried again to trace the source, to build a case, to prepare for the next encounter. It offered strategies, lines to say, ways to regain control. None of them eased the body. The arrow story returned this time not as teaching, but as instruction. Don't ask who did this yet. Don't decide what it means yet. Just tend to the wound. The car seat supported the spine. The head rested back against it. The body, given even a small amount of permission, began to soften around the edges. Not relax fully, but enough to notice how much effort had been spent holding everything together. A long exhale left the lungs, unforced, heavy. The arrow hadn't been removed. Not yet. But for the first time since the meeting ended, the person stopped pushing it deeper with thought. The parking lot remained quiet. The streetlights hummed. Time continued on, indifferent and steady. And in that stillness, something important became clear. Healing doesn't begin with understanding the person who caused the pain. It begins with choosing not to keep poisoning yourself while you search for answers. The car door opened with a soft thud and then closed again. The sound echoed briefly in the empty parking lot before fading. The person stepped out, feet touching the ground as if testing it, then stood there for a moment without moving. The night air was cooler than expected. It brushed against warm skin, immediate and real. A reminder that the body was here now, not inside the meeting room anymore. Keys were turned in the hand metal, pressing into the palm. The sensation grounded things. Small, but enough. The arrow was still there, but the bleeding had slowed. Walking toward the building entrance, the person noticed how careful each step felt. Not dramatic, just deliberate. As if the body was quietly asking to be handled with a little more care than usual. Inside the hallway, lights were dim. The floor shone faintly, reflecting footsteps that sounded louder than they should have. The building was nearly empty. Whatever had happened earlier had already moved on without waiting. That realization landed gently. The world doesn't pause for our wounds. It keeps going, whether we've tended to them or not. The elevator ride was short. The doors opened and closed without ceremony. No one else inside. No mirrors demanding a look, just the low hum of movement upward. When the door opened again, the person stepped out and paused, hands still resting against the wall. There was no need to hurry. Forgiveness still wasn't the word that fit. What fit was something quieter: triage. In emergency rooms, they don't start by asking who caused the injury. They stop the bleeding. They stabilize. They make sure the body survives long enough for answers to matter. This felt like that. Inside the apartment, shoes were left by the door. A jacket was hung up slowly, sleeves smoothed without thinking. The small rituals of arrival created a sense of boundary. Work stayed outside. The meeting stayed outside. The arrow came in, but not the whole story around it. A glass of water was poured and held with both hands. The coolness traveled up through the fingers into the arms. Another point of contact. Another reminder. Sitting down, the person noticed how much quieter the mind had become. Not empty, just less frantic. The questions were still there, but they weren't shouting anymore. Why did they say that? What did they mean? Should I address it later? Those could wait. Right now, the body needed to be unpoisoned. There was no technique involved, no special breathing pattern, just a willingness to stop interrogating the moment and start listening to the body instead. The shoulders were sore, the neck stiff, the chest tight but easing. Each sensation was allowed to exist without commentary. Pain, when met this way, changes. It becomes information instead of threat. The arrow, metaphorical as it was, didn't need to be yanked out violently. It needed steady attention, space, care, the kind that doesn't ask for explanations. Forgiveness began to make sense then, not as absolution, not as approval, but as a boundary. A boundary that said, I won't keep this inside me just to prove a point. The other person could keep their intention, whatever it was. The comment could keep its ambiguity. None of that needed to live in the body overnight. The room felt calmer, not because justice had been served, but because harm had stopped spreading. Later, there would be choices, conversations, maybe even clarity, but those belonged to a different moment. For now, the arrow was no longer being pushed deeper. The poison was no longer circulating unchecked. And that was enough. The night continued on, steady and unremarkable. The body settled into the chair. The breath found a slower rhythm. Healing didn't feel dramatic. It felt practical. And in that practicality, something important had shifted. Peace didn't wait for answers. It arrived the moment the wound was treated first. Wherever you are tonight, I'm grateful you chose to spend this quiet time here. If these stories help you rest, you're welcome to subscribe and return whenever you need a gentle place to land. And now, you don't need to do anything more. Let the night hold what you can't carry. And if sleep comes, Let it come.